Hey everyone, we are Bean and Bagel. We are a married couple from the Midwest in the U.S. I'm from Michigan, she's from Minnesota. Together we normally talk about food on our channel, and we post videos 1 to 2 times a week in case you're interested in following our channel. But we don't always talk about food, because today we're talking about Michigan culture, because Hope would like me to talk about a few things of the thousands of things in Michigan culture. And what's the first one you'd like me to talk about, I guess?
So I thought you could talk about the Mitten, the good old Mitten of Michigan.
All right, so those of you who are not from the States may or may not be familiar with the shape of the state of Michigan. So it literally looks like a mitten. And the funny thing about Michiganders is when we are asked, like, where do you live? We don't just tell people, we show people. We put our hands up and we're like, oh, we're from like right there, or we're from like right there. We got to show people where we're from. So I don't really know how the rest of y'all do that in the world, but we're kind of fortunate to have our state shaped like that, where we can literally use our hand like that.
Yeah, it's pretty unique to be able to like use one of your body parts to show people where you're from. I feel like it's kind of cool. I'm kind of jealous as a Minnesotan. We don't really have that. We just have to use like boring ways to tell people where we're from. Like, oh, I'm 45 minutes from St. Cloud or 30 minutes from Minneapolis. Like, that's boring, you know? You have to use like miles or hours or something like that. So I do think that's a pretty cool thing that Michigan has. I'm trying to think if there's any other states that are shaped like a body part.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is Italy, and that's not a state, but like,
Yeah.
you know, that's shaped like a boot. You could maybe show someone that way. Another thing that we do in Michigan that I'll mention, it's kind of changing the topic completely, is so you know how you have Halloween? So obviously that's October 31st. A lot of people celebrate Halloween around the world. And in Michigan, though, like what I found interesting was a lot of people that I met, like after I left Michigan, was nobody really was familiar with Devil's Night. So Devil's Night is kind of like Christmas Eve to Christmas, but it's like the eve of Halloween. But where I grew up, like Devil's Night was like you don't go out. Like that's why they call it Devil's Night. Like you stay home because someone's gonna try to start something with you, or whatever. The people will go out and do like toilet paper in yards, or they'll smash up like mailboxes and whatever else. Like people are out looking to do things that are not good for you. Whereas Halloween was kind of like, oh, the family time. We dress up like demons and goblins, and then like we just, talk to our neighbors and get free candy and stuff. But what I found interesting was not a lot of people that I've met since leaving Michigan are familiar with Devil's Night.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing about Devil's Night as a kid and just kind of like thinking like, oh, that must be what other people call Halloween, or they just call it something else. I didn't realize it was like a whole separate day from Halloween, of October 30th. And actually, it kind of came up when we got our cat, because our cat's birthday is October 30th, actually. And Greg was telling me like more in detail about Devil's Night, and I was like, man, I really didn't even realize it was like a whole separate night, and like the type of mischief that these crazy Michiganders would get up to. So, but he does call our cat Diablo, partially because she was born on Devil's Night. So.
Well, it's fitting too because her name is Delia. Yeah. So I was like, oh, we're going to call you Diablo because of your birthday.
Yes. Diablo.
But,
yeah. So the next one I thought you could talk about is the big auto culture in Michigan.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Michigan and the auto culture. Detroit, especially, it's got a lot of history there. Me growing up in Michigan with the auto culture, like I would liken it to like if you live somewhere where there's a McDonald's like on every corner, or nearly every corner. That's kind of like where I'm from in Michigan. Almost every corner there's some sort of small used car lot, some sort of parts department or parts store, major car dealer, automotive plant, or something like that. And just about everybody in the neighborhood is somehow connected to the auto culture. I don't know what that's like in Minnesota, like what they would call their culture, but like me growing up, I feel like just about every place I lived in Michigan, there was some sort of plant in my backyard, whether it was to make trucks or cars or whatever they were doing, car parts. There was some sort of plant that I grew up around. And a lot of people, like I said, are familiar with Detroit, but some things that people may not be as familiar with is like Detroit is kind of like Ford territory. So if you're in Detroit, that's your huge like Ford and Chrysler territory. But another city that's well known is Flint, and that's well known for like Chevy and GMC. And what's interesting is like when you're in those two cities, like if you're in Flint, for instance, you're rarely going to see a Ford. I mean, what is Minnesota's
like our overarching like culture like that? I think it's hard to define. I think Minnesota, like, we're very outdoorsy. There's a lot of farming and stuff. It kind of depends on where you are, but I would say like the thing that we all kind of hold dear in many ways is like the state fair. So maybe that would be like the closest like big like cultural identity.
I would say that's accurate too, because like having moved here from another state, a big topic of conversation in Minnesota is deep fried food. And so like I would say that aligns with the state fair.
Yeah, yeah. It is really interesting though, just as a Minnesotan, like thinking about cars, like when, we're here in the Minneapolis area, like you see every kind of car, foreign, domestic, there's a wide variety of vehicles, but like when I went to Bean's hometown for the first time, that was something that definitely stood out. It was like you pretty much only saw like Chevy, GMC, and maybe some Ford, here and there. But yeah, there's not a Kia, not a Toyota, not a Lexus, anything like that. They are very like dedicated to those brands. So
the biggest foreign one you're probably going to see in Michigan is BMW because of the Daimler Chrysler partnership of old. You'll see those other like fancy cars just like you would anywhere else, but yeah, it's interesting how there's pockets of places in Michigan where there are people who we absolutely don't drive foreign, or we absolutely don't drive whatever kind of brand it is. It's kind of interesting where I don't really sense that since moving to Minnesota. It's not like that at all. People are pretty like, whatever, I can afford it.
Yeah, for sure.
But
the next one I wanted to talk about, or wanted you to talk about first, and then I'll give my thoughts, is Pure Michigan.
this one comes up a lot. Like, so I'll admit, when I first like found out about the Pure Michigan slogan when it came out, I think it came out like early 2000s. I thought it was lame, like, because it sounds like we're a bunch of elitists over there. But then when I really started thinking of it, I was like, it's not that much different to when you think of like Texas, where they have their everything's bigger in Texas, or don't mess with Texas. It's like, it's a slogan that like once you hear it, it's just like that's what makes you think of those people or that place. But the question that I'll get sometimes is like, where did it come from? Why do they say that? And from my understanding is, so when I grew up, you would see a lot of these like ad slogans that said like Great Lakes, great times, and stuff like that. And those were lame too. But like, from my understanding, however many years after that slogan, people were like, we need to come up with something different, because that just kind of points out the lakes that surround the state. That doesn't really talk about the whole state. And so there was a lot of slogans that were getting voted on. And one was like Alaska, only closer, which I thought was kind of interesting. But they eventually landed on pure Michigan because of, like, it talks about how Michigan is kind of like in Alaska in its own right when you think of the UP and all, like, the snow and everything. Like, it's literally like a wasteland up there in the winter. And then down south, you have the automotive and the urban, and like there's a lot of hunting culture, and then there's like the professional sports teams and the history that goes back like centuries with the sports. And then you have kind of like this giant island really that's surrounded by water, so they're like, let's just call it pure Michigan because it stands apart, and our state is shaped like a mitten, nobody else's is, so we're just pure and different, so it's just pure Michigan.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've liked to tease Greg about with the whole pure Michigan thing is the Flint water crisis. I'm like, oh yeah, all that lead in the water, pure Michigan. So, but I think, in Minnesota, my brother-in-law is from Texas, actually, and he likes to make fun of us for being elitist because we have Lake Superior, and he acts as if we, like, named it that because we want to be all uppity and whatever, like, we have the best Lake Superior. But it's really just named that, I believe, because it's the biggest of the Great Lakes, so we didn't really come up with that.
Yeah, Michigan did because it's part of Michigan.
No. But anyways, I think that's all we have for today. And
so one thing I was gonna say though is there's a slogan in Michigan that a lot of people are familiar with, and it'll end the video I think pretty well for those who are familiar with it, and it's "I should get going," because a lot of people in Michigan will say that when it's kind of like in our Minnesota video, we talked about the Minnesota goodbye, and just quick recap of that is you're in the middle of a conversation and someone won't shut up and you can't leave, and it's like, I gotta, like their version in Minnesota is kind of like, oh, it's about that time, or we, whatever.
Well, it's getting late.
Yeah. And in Michigan, it's, I should get going, but then you don't really leave. So I should get going.
Thanks for watching, guys. Let us know in the comments if there's some other Midwesterners out there, Michiganders, Minnesotans. Love to hear from you, but other than that, have a great day. Bye.
See you guys.